Hello, everyone. It's Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. And today I'm going to be talking about this full Libra moon happening tomorrow here in the United States and in other parts of the world. It is happening in, on the 13th. This is, to me, a really powerful full moon, even though it's not the eclipses. This is the first Libra full moon that we're having that is not tethered to a eclipse. Last year we had a lunar eclipse in Libra, and we have the ruler of this full moon stationing during the full moon and is going to go direct a few hours later on the 13th in the United States, and it will already be the 13th in other areas of the world. But on the 13th, this moon, this Venus, it goes direct, but it's stationing during this full moon. Stationing is when a planet stations, it is like amplifying the energy. Um, it's almost like putting an exclamation point on something. So before we dive into this, I want to let you know, if you are an Aries, your birthday special is technically still running until the 20th of this month. I will say I am not taking, I have one more client next week. And then I'm not taking clients until the middle of June because I'm moving. I close on my house at the beginning of May, and my kids finish school on May 22nd, and then I will be trekking across the country. And by the 27th, I will be at my new home on the East Coast. And so this next month, I am preparing for everything while it is the last month of my kids being in school. So my attention is needed there. And I will say that I will do forecast videos for as long as I can until I move. Because eventually I'm going to have to pack up my computer. So just know that, and know that as soon as I unpack, my computer is going to be the first thing I unpack. And, I will put out a forecast ASAP. Um, so there's that. And my point being with all of this is, if you're an Aries and you want your birthday special, you can still get it. It's just you're not going to be able to have that reading until the middle of June, whenever my books are open. And you'll be able to find dates on there on my calendar. It'll show the dates that I have available. That's the other thing I want to mention is, if you're wanting to, I've already had clients start booking for that time period. So if you are wanting a session, if you've had a package and you want to book one of those sessions, now would be the time to pre-book that. Because I, have a feeling they're going to fill up because some of them already have. And then just to mention, as most of you who are subscribed to this channel, I am doing the Venus class next weekend on the 19th. I am teaching Venus, Sexuality, and Evolution through the Jeffrey Wolf Green Association. And if you haven't signed up for that yet and you want to, I will post a link down below. So let's talk about this now that I got that out of the way. This is like I said, it's a profound full moon. The way that I'm seeing this before I break down the astrological conversations is that this is the release of the extremes or the imbalances. Everything that you've been consciously working on that's come into your awareness over the last, oh goodness, I would say especially 24 months. This is like this pivotal moment as Venus is stationing during this lunation, and it's a full moon. So it really pinpoints like what is needing to be released, and it speaks to the healing of this. It's also interesting because this is right after the eclipse. This is the first lunation or major lunation after the eclipse season. So we had that Virgo lunar eclipse on March 14th, and we were really, you know, it was speaking to what we're wrapping up over the last 19 years and how we will be working on this throughout the next 6 months. It made us very clear about what was going on, what we needed to do. Then we had the Aries solar eclipse, which really helped us to understand what are our new karmic beginnings, whereas that lunar eclipse was what the karmic endings were. And then, like I said, the Aries solar eclipse was what are the karmic beginnings? What is this new chapter you're starting on? And now we have the full moon in Libra with Venus stationing, and Mercury is now direct. And the Sun and Chiron are conjunct in this chart, and there are a lot of aspects or conversations playing out. And it is helping us to really understand what this time period in our lives, personally and collectively, is really pointing to, right? The eclipse seasons can be like all of a sudden something happens or something begins, something ends. And I actually feel like this lunation that can bring that kind of vibe as well. Um, especially if there was something you were sitting on the fence about, Libra, during the eclipse that was made aware. And this can really pinpoint the action that is necessary to take. The other thing that I want to say, just as Libra and as an archetype, is there's some nuances about it. Yeah, it's about, you know, the emotional extremes, the Libra moon, emotional extremes that can play out. It can be about sitting on the fence. It can be about not choosing the truth or choosing a direction to go and just kind of like playing devil's advocate in one's own life and becoming confused. It can also be where there's an immense amount of security when we can't help someone or fix something. But then there's even these deeper layers besides codependencies and enmeshments and disharmony and imbalance. It's really a lot of the emotional extremes that can play out, that I feel a lot of people over the last 24 to 36 months have come into an awareness about is where they might have abandoned themselves within relationships and they've been wanting to heal that. You walked away from a relationship and it's like, I don't even know who I am. This could have happened over the last 36 months, especially the last 24, or even reflecting about a time in your life whenever that occurred. And it's really when that happens to us, it's where we have to make the choice to tap into Taurus and Aries and learn to reconnect with our unique individuality and our freedom and independence. So this lunation can bring up some of that, or it can make you aware if it's something that was coming into your awareness, especially during the eclipse season. And now you could be called to make that actual choice to let go of something that you didn't want to, and to heal. The other dynamic that is more of a nuanced characteristic or archetype of this Libra moon is where we mask. We live for other people's expectations, and when we're left with ourselves, we don't realize um, you know, how much we've been avoiding our truth in order to keep the peace. It's also this dynamic of where we can mm, just lose sight of being able to listen to ourselves. This is a big dynamic that can come up or has been coming up that's wanting to be released, is like where we're going to different people and asking for the advice instead of listening to ourselves and taking the necessary action or being our own authority in our lives. There can also be this dynamic where we're really called to release our need to be needed, where we're going to have to understand that our value comes from within. Um, and another dynamic that could come up is where there's a lot of healing that needs to be happening around feeling alone, that you've given, and no one else has been able to give to you um, in on an equal basis, because maybe you could hear where someone was coming from, but they couldn't hear where you were coming from. And so a story has played out, whether it be in the past or it's been recently. And choices are meant to be made. This can be where there's just too much of a um, gap in between you and someone else's growth. And so this all of these dynamics can be coming to the forefront of the mind, because it's wanting to be culminated, especially if you've been really reflecting on all of this for many, many, many months, a couple of years, right? Um, so I wanted to speak to that. But I did want to say this is, you know, a full moon happens when the moon opposes the sun. And that means that the emotional dynamics, the moon, become illuminated in order for us to oppose them, to throw them off. And this is this kind of a vibe, right? It's helping us to really release, surrender, and heal what is absolutely necessary. Maybe the last little things that have stuck with you over the past few years, where you've experienced grief, hurt, pain, trauma, isolation, all of that. And so it's calling for this changing of an awareness and to throw off the past. So let me point out a few things. Um, I wanted to give you this foundation, but I want to really point this out in the chart for you all. So this is the other dynamic. We really want to look at this south node, north node happening in the third and the ninth houses. Moon is also in the ninth house. It is ruled by Venus, like I said, stationing. She's balsamic to Saturn and the north node, both now ruled by Neptune and Aries. The sun and Chiron are conjunct and opposing that moon. The ascendant of this chart is at 23 Sag, and this is important to note. Well, it's 24, excuse me. It is sextiling the moon and squaring Venus and Saturn, and it is also trining this Mars Chiron. Okay? So it is ruled by Jupiter, who is now squaring the nodes. This is big. With the resolution node being this north node. Jupiter is ruled by Mercury in a new phase conjunction. to the North Node. And then we also have, I'm going to clear this. We also have Uranus and a yod with the moon and Venus and Saturn. This is profound. We also have the Sun and Chiron squared to their ruler. And then the Sun is square to its ruler. So luckily, we have good old Pluto trining this Uranus and a couple of, lovely aspects going on with all of this. So let's talk about this, remembering that all of this Pisces is trining that Mars, okay? Which is good stuff. So now that you have these kind of in your mind, let's break this down. Let's first start with the moon in the ninth house and the south node in the ninth house is where we are truly called to understand where we have or where we're needing to heal dynamics around our thinking, and our thinking, Virgo, is also corresponding to the ninth house beliefs. Jupiter is also square these nodes, and it's really accentuating this dynamic. Where in the past we realized that we had certain beliefs and thinking around our relationships, Libra, and how there were projected expectations. And now we're needing to purge those dynamics, especially revolving around Mercury and Pisces, the ruler of that south node. The idealistic expectations that have been learned that are not conducive to relationships based in equity. This is where some people have gotten into, I don't even know who I am. I have, let my relationship, it became so codependent that I started to really become a vicarious extension of my partner. My likes were their likes, my values were their values, and I abandoned my values, or I didn't even realize what my values were. Any of these Libran dynamics are coming up, and it's for the emotional release and the healing around the thinking and the ideals and the expectations, and getting back in touch with your own authenticity. That is that Sag on the rising. And with Jupiter square these nodes and the resolution being the North Node and Pisces in the third, it is truly about, it's just this repeating signature of what beliefs did you take in? What messages did you take in? What is needing to be healed around your own thinking about relationships, yourself, with others, your expectations? And there's another layer to that. For some, there can be a need to really purge and heal the dynamics of where others have projected certain beliefs onto you that could have created a dynamic of feeling like you needed to stay in something because you felt guilty, or because you felt inferior, or maybe if you just tried harder, or maybe the person was showing potential for a little bit, or maybe you denied reality, or you believed what they said and it fell flat. Again, this can be where this is either reflected on to get to the bottom of why, or this could be recently, like the very recent, or within the past couple of years. And so it's wanting us to really understand where we've gone against our nature, our individuality, and our authenticity, and to reconnect with it in order to come into equity with others, living a life that is based in authenticity, right? Removing the mask, removing the fear of, if I don't live up to this person's expectations or these forms of perfection, then who am I? It's really asking for us to release, to heal. This is also really indicated with Venus, the ruler of this moon, stationing in the sign of Pisces and balsamic to Saturn and that north node. It's like asking us to wrap up these ways that we've related to ourselves and others in our relationships, that have how we've structured our relationships to ourselves and to others, Saturn, Venus, and to heal that, to release the distortions that have played out, or where one has suppressed because what they feel is natural is actually going against their truth, or their what they've learned, growing up, and being afraid to be one's own person because what will someone think of me, or I don't really agree with this, but I was taught that this is how relationships go, or this is how I'm supposed to be as a man or as a woman. All of this is wanting to be culminated, and it is to get us back in line with natural laws. All right. And that is also part of the Jupiter square, with the resolution node being the north node, and also that south node in the moon being in the ninth. There's this need to get back into the natural, timeless nature of existing and coexisting within equity. We're seeing this play out within society right now. There is a lot of crisis going on with different cultures, Jupiter, Sag, and the persecution of them, Jupiter in the sixth house, South Node in Virgo. And these are complete and utter distortions of natural law. It's creating imbalances. It's also, there's delusional beliefs running amok right now, that are exclusionary and not inclusionary. And it's also where we're seeing extremes play out with the use of money and the weaponization of it, and the disillusioning experience of people being afraid. So even this lunation is going to pack a punch with, it's already reflecting what's going on a global and social level right now. So that's why those of us who consciously work with the energies need to continue to do our job. So on a personal level. So here's the other thing. Whatever it was that came into your mind when Venus entered her retrograde cycle on March 1st, in the sign of Aries, eventually we came to understand what needed to be released during this Venus retrograde cycle. This is now asking for us, if you haven't been doing that, to absolutely do it. It's also making us absolutely aware around what that is, in order for us to throw off the past emotional dynamics, especially in relationships. This is also doubled down. We have Chiron conjunct the sun. It's balsamic. It's wanting us to wrap up how things that have occurred early on in our lives have affected our sense of freedom, our independence, how it could have affected our ability to be interdependent, and how we've played out codependencies. And so that Sun Chiron conjunction is also really illuminating the emotional dynamics that, again, Mars is ruling that in Cancer in the seventh house, where we're needing to put into place these new emotional patterns of how we relate with others and ourselves. And then we also have the T-square going on between Chiron and the Sun conjunction squaring its ruler, Mars, in Cancer, um, in the 7th, and then that is squaring, Mars in Cancer is squaring its ruler Venus in Libra in the 9th house. So this is really pulling in, these are all first quarter phases. There can be a crisis in action. Whatever I've been learning and discovering, Sun and Chiron in the 3rd, I'm needing to put this into action and act on my desire to do so within my relationships and how I share and how I receive, and how I do that on an emotional level in order to cultivate these new patterns. Mars and Cancer in the 7th. And then there's this need for us to create action as well, whenever it comes to the Mars and Cancer square, the Libra moon in the 9th house. In order for me to relate to other people and to attract people that I can come into harmony, I'm needing to know and to discern and create correct action around when to give, who to give to, how to give, how to hear, how to listen, and to also be authentic and be rooted in the truth, to unmask if that's what you've been doing, to nurture oneself through one's own authenticity. And that will then promote the healing. So opposing the past, the moon opposite the sun and Chiron, and then this T-square going on between Mars and that lunation with the sun. A lot of it can bring dynamic tension of there's choices that absolutely need to be made. Where we see this playing out in the collective is Cancer is the homeland. It's the motherland. It's our ancestral roots. So is the 4th house. And we're seeing the wounding of exclusionary leadership perpetuating imbalances that are distortions of natural law. That is that T-square. And this is where people can start to get fed up even more, and they're wanting to use their voice and to express and to do this in a peaceful way and to cultivate change. So there can be intuitive guidance personally and collectively that comes online as a way to help us to improve and to purge these dynamics, but there's still the crisis going on. Okay. Then the other conversation I pointed out was that what I want to say before I get into that is that all of the Pisces energy is trining Mars and Cancer. That is such a beautiful signature. That is where all of the hard work we've been doing for a very, very long time, years and years, especially the last, past 2 nodal transits of Libra and Aries, and also Taurus and Scorpio. This is where all of that hard work and that deep soul searching, unearthing, excavation, it's like saying, yeah, you're wrapping this up, and continue to be self-determined and to set this into motion. There's a lot of unseen energy from your guides, from, your ancestors, the Pisces dynamics that are really helping to motivate and to encourage the healing and to help us to put into action these new emotional patterns. That's that trine from that Pisces to that Mars and Cancer. So we get to practice too. That's what this is we're wanting to set this into motion to fully integrate it in order to promote further healing. this is where we feel like we can also receive the messages about what action we're meant to take. Jupiter square the nodes, um, Mercury and Pisces conjunct the North Node and that whole stellium of Pisces. Um, and it's like needing to totally root oneself in the actual reality and make a choice from there, take an action from there. If there's intuitive guidance, if you're having a dream and you receive a message, if you come to an understanding, it is asking for that action in order for the integration to occur. It heals the past. So that also leads me on a collective level. This is where we can see a lot of people waking up to deception and, you know, uh, lies perceived as truth and crisis starting to happen even more. Like, not to scare people, but I feel like this lunation is really going to pack a punch with the things that are going on globally. Okay. Personally, this can be really beautiful energy, actually. Um, we need to remember that Neptune is in Aries and it is ruling that Venus stationing. It's like that's asking for action to be made. It's just this repeating signature that I keep saying again because that Mars in Cancer is ruling that Neptune. It's putting into action what you want to do in order to heal. And that is through integrating your new emotional awareness into the here and now and how you relate to others in an authentic way. Okay. Um, and there can be tension as well, just because the Sag rising is squaring the Venus. It's like there can be an immense amount of fear. Like, if I am myself, am I going to be judged? Am I going to be hurt? Am I going to be shamed? And that moon and Libra opposing Chiron is saying, throw that off. The people who care about you, who love you, who treasure you, who accept you are not going to go anywhere. They're going to be happy. They're going to be excited for you. They will be there. So there's that. And then there's also the yaw that I talked about between Uranus in the fifth house and Taurus. It is sextile its ruler, Venus and Saturn. And both of those are in conjunct this moon. And this is where, on the one hand, Uranus and Taurus in conjunct the moon and the ninth house in Libra is where it's a gibbous in conjunct. It's asking for us to have self-actualization through the transformation of our inner relationship, listening to ourselves, throwing off the voices of others, and tapping into our intuition and our inner listening and cultivating emotional harmony through that transformative process. It's like liberating from the masking or overcompensating in the past, right? It's asking for self-love and self-respect and self-dignity. And the inconjunct between Venus and Saturn in to the moon in the ninth house is where there is this need to improve upon the function of where our will meets another's will, right? Are you going to live authentically or are you going to submit? Are you going to continue to live out the values or are you of others or the expectations? Or are you going to live authentically? Are you going to be able to have common ground? Where do you need to heal the past? Again, it repeats over and over. This is what I love about astrology because it makes it very clear what something's about whenever it repeats over and over and over again. So the other dynamic is I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. Lilith and Pallas are still conjunct in the sign of Aquarius. Okay, I'm going to point this out. Here's Lilith. Here is Pallas. Then they're ruled by Uranus and Taurus. Uranus and Taurus is sextiling the Saturn. It's trining the South Node. It's sextiling all of this energy right here. Gorgeous. And Jupiter is also square to Saturn. So this is in the second house. This is where we're needing to connect with our own personal truth, our grounding into ourselves, our individuality, having the courage to continue to throw off the past, to liberate. Lilith is giving us this courage, and Pallas Athene is helping us to be observer in our life to liberate from the messages, the noise, the words, everything that we've been told that's affected our self-esteem or what we've learned. It is like wanting to block that and just have us look within and have the courage to do so in order for this transformation to continue to go on, right? And it wants us to be passionate about it. Um, you know, with the ruler of those two asteroids sextiling Mars, again, this is helping us to have an integration of this transformation in order for us to implement those new emotional patterns that create a nurturing sensation and direct experience of feeling inwardly secure, understanding now you're knowing that it's possible if that's something that has been a struggle for you. This is also where you can really observe. It's helping us to observe how to be more responsive or responsible within our relationships now that we are gaining all of this awareness about our own inner dynamics. And then Uranus sextiling all of the Pisces is where we can really be called to, that's where we're receiving these messages that are helping us to move forward, to heal. It's also where we're getting to liberate from the thinking, from the old values, from the structures, and making the new choices to have the courage to do so. So there's a lot of integration that can really help happen. I see on a global level, there's can be some trauma or crisis that happens around the sharing of resources or dynamics that are happening on the land. It can be any type of atmospheric dynamic, or it can be a dynamic where there's some destabilization that happens with Earth's resources, and it can create all of a sudden something can happen in a flash of an instance with that. Personal levels, it's all about this integration of the healing for transformation of the inner relationship to self. Jupiter squaring Ceres and Pisces, that is absolutely, that's a first quarter square as well. So that is this call, and Mercury, Jupiter's ruler, is on the North Node. Mercury and Ceres are both ruled by Neptune and Aries. This is where whatever you felt like you lost, wherever you felt like you lost something, that you didn't have the ability to express yourself, or you felt insecure, or you felt that there was trauma around how you believed about yourself, what you thought about yourself, how you internalized that. This is really where we can gain this nurturing quality of healing that inner relationship to self through expanding upon our own personal truths and creating action around that to promote more self-improvement in this area. So I really love that. It's asking for this action, you know. Mercury is on the North Node and a new phase. Neptune in Aries, a square between Jupiter and Ceres. Action, action, action. It's all necessary, the things that are going on in this chart. Action equates healing. No matter the consequence, it's not about getting down on oneself. It's about laughing at the absurdity when you realize you make a mistake, but you know that your intention is pure, Pisces, and that you've set out to promote healing for yourself and maybe even for others. This is also this time where I feel like a lot of people are healing their actual nature. Um, and almost feeling like even with the chaos going in the world, that there is like a light at the end of the tunnel, like you see something, or now you're starting to experience it or have the fruition and seeing not no longer just sensing the potential, but this is where it's like you're coming to understand it through the direct experience. And the more you perpetuate the action, and you ride that intuition or your gut feeling, um, the more and more you're going to be able to validate and nurture that from within, and it promotes that healing more and more and integrates it further to what now where it's not just a vision, but it becomes the actual reality of how you're living. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything else. I did want to say this is powerful. Cassandra is conjunct Venus stationing. Okay. Both ruled by this Neptune. Mercury, which is also always linked to Cassandra, is conjunct this North Node. All right. Powerful. What I mean by this, remember, it's also trining that, sextiling Uranus, squaring the ascendant, and in conjunct this moon. For some, there can be dynamics where they have told the truth. They fought for the truth. They spoke the truth. All of this third house Mercury dynamics going on. And their self-esteem was absolutely obliterated by someone not hearing them, believing them. This is where one can totally heal this. And if you need to say something or have a healing conversation, do it. And understand that you get to throw off the expectation of the outcome and you get to do it just for your own healing. This is also where we can really recover our own personal truths. And through that, the healing is promoted and integrated fully. It is also where if you have isolated because you experience something very traumatizing, Uranus is ruled by this Venus that's stationing, that is conjunct Cassandra, and you got in trouble for saying what it is you needed to say. This is really asking for us to not over-identify with that dynamic, but to truly utilize that experience to sharpen our discernment around who to share with, who not to. Collectively, I see that this can be someone in the collective with what's going on, who could be a whistleblower, who could be speaking out, and it could really inspire other people. It could expose things. They could also receive backlash from this. And so it will be the community will need to stand up to support that person is another way that I see that. That Venus stationing and its conjunct Cassandra, very powerful to me. And it can be someone who is speaking up about massive deception going on or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see if that plays out. Um, and you can think about that in your life. If someone has told things about you that were not true and other people in return didn't believe you, and how excruciatingly painful that experience was for other people to believe lies that were told, yet wouldn't believe the actual truth when you said something. I just want you to know that there's deep lessons in this, and that there is a release and a healing that can happen during this time. So this is your full moon report. I am going to try to upload another video later. It'll be next week. What I do want to say is, again, Venus on the 13th is going to go direct. She's going to trine. Well, when she goes direct, Mercury and Mars are going to be trining each other in perfection. That really helps, can help healing occur through having a personal voice of authority and saying something that sets into motion and a new emotional pattern in your life. Again, the key is to be an observer, and someone's either going to hear you or they're not. That has nothing to do with your worth or your value, especially if your intention is pure. The other thing that I do want to say is on the 16th, Mercury is going to re-enter Aries and conjunct Neptune. Again, if you didn't say the thing that you needed to, it can give you a lot of courage. It also is a time where all of a sudden we're understanding, or things that were hidden around what has been said can be revealed. It's also where we can really have the courage and be inspired to take action around learning more about ourselves and putting that into our relationships with others and integrating it. It's asking for action and changing our own thinking since we've been purging so much. It's also where we can have a lot of anger for some people come up, and to use that in a constructive way. Okay, we're going to see that collectively as well. On the 17th, Saturn is going to conjunct the North Node in a new phase. That's going to feel really good because it's like we're releasing the past and all of the work that we've been doing around wanting to restructure uh, everything in our lives, from values to beliefs to how we relate to, how we relate to others. It is really giving us a jump start to this, okay? Especially with Neptune and Aries. So it's going to be in a new phase to the North Node, still in Pisces. Yeah, it's going to be ruled by Neptune and Aries. That is going to start to feel really good. I have some thoughts about that collectively, but I'm going to hold off on that for now. And then on the 18th, Mars is going to re-enter into Leo. This is going to be its third pass at 0 degrees Leo. So the first one was November 3rd, 2024. And the second one was January 6th, 2025. It's stationed at 6 degrees Leo way back in the fall. And so I want you all to think about what was going on November 3rd, 2024 and January 6th, 2025. Whatever it was that you were needing to resolve, dealing with self-love, self-respect, leadership, dignity, acting on your desires of having passion, or what you felt like you wanted to do to self-actualize or to have purpose. this is really, it's going to feel like a weight is lifted and that action can be made further. I mean, the sun is still going to be in Aries, ruled by Mars and Cancer. So whatever it is that you've been sitting on for quite some time, put the action into it because it's going to cultivate that more nurturing from within. Okay. So I hope that this has been helpful and I will see you all soon. I look forward to whenever I can. I start seeing you all again in the middle of June. And whenever I do move, I'll be in a new setting and I just new action taken on my end, right? Anyway, just remember there's a lot of cord cutting in people's lives right now, and it can actually promote a lot of deep healing. So until then, I'll see you all next time.